Depending on your viewing angle, you'll be able to see there's Comma.ai silk screened across it. Anyway, it was hidden underneath the shipping label, so I did kind of a interesting job trying to remove that, but you get the general idea. So let's tear into this. And you can see it was taped over. I think they might have reused this box. So I did have a previous unit, experimental unit, where you basically tear off a strip here. It was going to be a reinforced piece of cardboard so it wouldn't break in half and you could just tear it, but we'll just pretend that it's set up like that. This is the first time that I'm opening this, I believe, production unit. So you can see what the unboxing experience would look like. So you can see it is magically mounted to this box lid, and I actually know it's because it's got a mount built into it. So I'll just go like that. You can see it's got an injection molded case, and here's that mount. You're not expected to use this mount in your car. This is just for the box. And you can see it's definitely different than the Comma.2 and Comma.3 mounts. Similar, but very different overall. You could probably just sort of insert it like that. You can kind of feel it'll go there, and then you just move it down a little bit. It's actually very smooth. And I emphasize that because previous Comma.2 and Comma.3 mounts had a tendency to be very difficult. Like, you had to put a lot of pressure into it. We had questions about it all the time. Some people have asked, what is this here? Well, that's a speaker hole. And actually, it mounts like this. So let's just put it back on here. Mounts just like that. Speaker, once again, you got driver monitoring camera, have a fan, a very custom fan setup. I'll get into that more later. So there's some more air holes on the side, this side. Center mounted. This is your main camera, the F camera. So road facing, narrow camera. And then this is going to be your E camera, which is your wide, but still road facing camera. And this is D cam. So D camera for driver monitoring. And you have a very small, but high quality OLED panel. I did take out a little piece of paper that was in here. It was basically an invoice. So let's just see what else is in here. Okay, so we have a special cable. There's a little custom logo here. It's got a comma logo and it says OBDC. And it's got that on both ends of the cable, on one side of each end. And it's got this Velcro type wrap there. So I'll put that to the side. Little wipe here, alcohol wipe. So of course you use that when you're about to mount on the windshield. Okay, and I suspected I would see this. So underneath this, it's kind of hard to see. But you kind of have to just take this off like that, and it's got this little dab of sticky stuff there that was sticking it to this, which looks like it had some sort of It says this device complies with Part 15 of the FCC rules. All that kind of good, probably guess it's required legal jargon or whatever. But anyway, fine print. And you can see there are 2 mounts on the bottom here. So basically they're just cleverly used the 2 mounts to hold the wipe. I suspect a lot of people will just kind of break into this, but it does just slide right out. So I'll just put this off to the side, and you can just go like that. So that's kind of convenient how they did that. These are very nice injection molded mounts. The ones that I had before were 3D printed. So I'm looking forward to removing the old mount and sticking one of these new ones on. Plus the old mount that I had was slightly lower than I would have liked. So I'll cover mounting tactics later. Let's see what else is in here. So sort of another little box thing. And okay, so this is nice. It's got the OBD2 port connectable comma power thing here. I never asked them to include this. They just included, which this is actually for the version 2 harness stuff. And I do actually have a version 2 harness box. Let me just make sure nothing else is in here. Okay. And this is some nice custom padding. So very clever. Oh, little hidden Easter egg. So this is, I recognize as being the circuit board that if you watch the Comma presentation at Comic-Con, they showed that little circuit board there. So that was pretty clever. And nothing else in there. There is a setup guide QR code. Not hard to type in Comma.ai/setup. Okay. And of course, make driving chill. Welcome to the fleet. We'll talk about that a little bit more because one of the things I wanted to demonstrate was the keyboard on this. So in order to demonstrate that, I'll need to power it on. So I actually have a 12 volt adapter with the connection here that goes from a barrel plug to USB-C. Playing around with this before, this was just not a button. A lot of, kind of jokingly, people thought this is a button on the Comma 3. I took the little dust cover out, but basically people would be like, oh, I hit the button, what does that do? That isn't a button, that was just a dust cover. So they continued that tradition, and here's the dust cover for that. I've taken it out, leave that dust cover there. That is USB-C. You don't normally need to use it, but you can connect things to it. You could connect a USB hub or an eGPU or an Ethernet adapter. It's already got Wi-Fi, of course, so you can use wireless. The wireless connection in here, I think it's just 5 gigahertz. But anyway, let's just connect this in. When I use these kind of setups, I like to disconnect the barrel jack and just get this situated, because it's not good to be kind of wiggling the cable in with live power if you can help it. So I've already connected that in there. It seems solid. And I will connect the barrel plug. If you're at the right angle, you can see the little LED there. Of course, you can see the Comma logo pop up there. And we'll just wait and see what happens. I did spend some time creating a new Wi-Fi password, or an additional one. Okay, it says start there. But for the keyboard demonstration later, I have never actually typed in welcome to the fleet like this before. So that'll be our password, our keyboard test. Let's just see what happens here. I'm going to hit start. Okay, and I haven't used this UI before. The older UI didn't have this from what I recall. But you can see here. Let's see what happens. Yeah, that's kind of nice. Okay, interesting. So although I normally use custom software on my other Comma devices, since I'm still technically testing this, I do prefer to use the stock code. So let's do that. And it's supposed to set up pretty quickly since it should have the code already on here. So now it just wants me to scroll down and read. Okay, these terms I must accept. Okay. It's fairly intuitive. You know from using your cell phone how to scroll with your finger. Okay, no problem. I will accept. And there it is. It's already installed basically. I'm at 0.10.2. It's a nightly code. So literally should only be updated once a day as opposed to master code, which is commit by commit. And you can see I don't have any Wi-Fi connection yet. Let's change that. There was a problem with the software that was pre-installed on here. It was from November 4th. And so that had some issues, so I uninstalled it, and now here we're at the start again. And I'm going to slide this to use, or to hopefully use that SSID, and then get on the internet and download the code, which is still private code right now, so it hasn't been merged into the main OpenPilot repository. So let's connect this. So I was expecting to be able to just tap on this and prompt for a password. That wasn't working. Then I realized I had to click that. I believe that experience changes once the code gets updated. So let me go back there and to Comma, there we go. And I'm going to use that password that I have there. It's not necessarily a super easy password. And I actually did try using my thumb. I was able to get pretty good input with my thumb, which is obviously a lot bigger than pointer finger and even bigger than pinky. But I'm going to use my pointer finger, and you can see my password here is welcome to the fleet. Of course, that's hearkening back to what's on the box, with, of course, a little modification with an exclamation mark, a capital F, and a couple number 3s. So let's see how well this works. So let's start out with welcome. And I'm not going to be too careful. If I make a mistake, I'll just try to back over whatever mistake I've made. So W-E, oh, that's a mistake. Let's go back. So W-E-L, no, it's a space. Okay, L-C-O-M-E. Okay, we got a complete word so far. T-O, and then the. Okay, so far so good. And then I got an exclamation mark. Let me just see where that is. Okay, and then we got to do capital F. That's a C. That's not going to work. C again. G. Okay, that was the charm. We'll do L, and then 3, 3, and then the letter T. So that looks good. Let's enter it. And to me, this isn't going to be super intuitive for a lot of people, but this arrow here is the enter. This is a space. There is a backspace there. And then usually if you're just trying to back out of everything, you have to swipe down. Anyway, I'm going to hit this enter. And it'll take a little bit of time for it to basically connect. So a few more seconds. And if it's wrong, then it'll shoot back an error that said that I put in the wrong password. Normally it would progress to the next screen. I don't see it doing that. But here when I go to comma, it shows a trash can, which means it is paired. So I'm going to just see what happens if I try to go back. Okay, that worked. So to me, that was kind of like a miss on the code side of things. I should not have had to do that. But anyways, it says I'm connected to the internet. And once again, that kind of behavior with the UI is a work in progress. They're constantly updating it. And this is on older code too, about a week old. So you can see it's installing relatively quickly. I have a 1 gigabit fiber connection. And this is using a 5 gigahertz connection. Although I do have Wi-Fi 7, but the modem on the C4 does not have that capability. So that's fine. I think the only thing in my house that connects over Wi-Fi 7 is maybe one of my more recent desktop computers, as well as this laptop in front of me. Okay, so looks like it finished the Open Pilot side of things, and now it needs to do a system update. So this is the Agnos code for the system partition. So I'm hitting that. I don't know what it's expecting me to do. I'm tapping that. Yeah, okay, here we go. And anyone familiar with the Comma ecosystem knows that this is not an instant upgrade. So with magic of video editing, I will surely make this transition a little faster. Okay, this is familiar. Except now we're on November 11 nightly. That's good. Today is the 10th, but the way the nightlies work, they're actually in UTC time, so that's ahead right now of me by 6 hours. So since it's 7 here, that would put it already into the 11th. It knows how to connect to my internet connection, so that's good. Carried that over from the installation process earlier. And I'm going to make sure I have this paired. It should, I thought it was already paired, but oh no, it is paired, but it needs to be upgraded to Prime. Let's see what else is going on here. Enable SSH keys. So mine is pretty straightforward, so I'll just do E. Oh. Okay, so I got my name in there with minimal typo kind of thing. One of the things I noticed was, for example, when I was trying the R, it did the F a couple times. And I did speak to Nick at Comma when I was in San Diego, and he said one of the tricks that he used was just to register a little bit lower than where my finger was. So if you're already trying to compensate or do something weird, then instead of the R, you might actually trigger the F because he's already aiming a little bit lower. So let me just enter that, and it should be entered now. And okay, it's got my name in there. And once again, to go back, you have to scroll down generally. And let's see what is toggleable in here. Okay, generally looks fine as it is. I guess I can see if the SSID connectivity process is better. Oh yeah, this definitely looks different now. Yeah. Cool. So these are all the same router except for the hero, that's the camera. So let's just demonstrate what it looks like if I put in the wrong thing. So first off, you can just click on the SSID, and actually I think it might even remember an attempt that I made for this SSID. So if I click connect, okay, good. It doesn't remember the password, but I'll just type in an incorrect password so you can see I'm just messing around. Hit enter, and it should say that it failed at some point because that was definitely not the password. It says incorrect password. So I'm just going to go back, and I think it should still be connected to my Comma SSID. So let's go back to network. I guess it had disconnected. Okay, it is connected. And it has my IP address. That's an interesting IP address. See how much this thing weighs and compare it to the other devices. So I've actually, normally I use this in pounds and ounces, so imperial units, but let's put it on grams since that's how I am feeling today. Okay, 164 grams. Let's compare that to a Comma 3X. 316. Interesting. Let's once again remember 166 this time. Try it again. 164. Okay, so I guess it depends on the direction of the wind or something. So 164 versus 316. So it's like a 2 times difference. And just let's humor a comma too. 332. So 332, 316, and 164. So keeps getting lighter and lighter. So that's good. Let's just kind of check out some of the dimensions regarding the mount. So I brought some mounts out here, and basically, let's just remember, here's some nostalgia. This is the old Eon mount. So I'll just put that to the side here because nobody uses this anymore. That's just crazy. But what people really do have in their car now is going to be either the C3 mount or the C3X mount. Let's compare against the C4 mount. So they look similar, but they are definitely not going to be exactly the same, especially when compared against the C4, where you can see it's actually much closer together there. Interestingly, although one might think that this one has more surface area, it's actually a lot closer to the surface area of the C3X mount than you would think, because it's got this it's a little bit wider here. It is narrower on the C3X mount though. So probably it does have, yeah, you can tell it does have a little bit more surface area on the C4 mount. But let's just take some basic measurements here. So I'll zero this out. Okay. And let's measure this. So looks like about 56. Yeah, about 56 millimeters. Okay, that way. Then let's get it this way. About 30 millimeters that way. And compare it against the C3. Now it's interesting because it's a little bit tapered off here. So I'll keep that in mind. So 64.6, nearly 65. 24.65, so that's nearly 25. Compare that against this one. So this is the C3 mount. And it's about 62 millimeters that way. About 25.3. 25, yeah. Kind of depends how much pressure you want to put on it, because it might have it has some overlapping VHB. So if you put some pressure on it, it'll compensate for that. So yeah, it's just under 25, depending on how much pressure you put on that VHB. So it could be, you could say it's 24.8. Compare it again to this one, 24.6. And then of course, that's much less than the 30 millimeters here. Okay, that's 15 millimeters. And let's see how far this is. Okay, so almost 43 millimeters for that. Could try to get the inner measurement here. About 38.8 there. It's hard to measure this little gap in here, but I believe it's about just over 2 millimeters. Yes, yeah, about 2.5 millimeters. So that one's a hard one to do, but definitely different than this one, that's for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy how different the mounts are. A lot of people are just wondering, oh, can I use the old mount? Definitely cannot. Some people will want to leave the old mount up and then put the new mount somewhere around. Of course, you don't want one to obstruct the other. So if you're going to just leave the C3X mount alone, you could just put the new one a bit lower, as long as they don't interfere like visually with each other. You could also put the new mount to the left. If you're in a country where you're driving from the left side of your car, then you'd put it to the left. If you're on the right side of the car, then you put it to the right. And that's just because of the driver camera is positioned on the right side here. So you'd want to have it able to see you at all times, of course. I'll talk about that more when I take you into the car. the cables. So Comma includes this cable. It's a custom cable that has some wires basically missing inside. That's intentional so that it's a little bit thinner. So I'm going to just do a little comparison and also some measurements on this cable. We can compare it to a bunch of other cables that I have here. I have here a cable tester, and we're going to use that to just kind of visually see what wires are missing, if you want to call it missing. Some of them are intentionally missing, really. So let me show you what I have here. I just have some extension cables connected to this board so that I'm not putting a lot of wear and tear on the actual board connectors. So these cables have every pin connected, and I can prove that with this cable. This is one that's actually going to be more useful than I thought, I believe. And I'll show you why a little later. But if I connect it like so, and then just turn on the tester, you'll see all the lights come on. So that means every single wire is connected. So that's good. Compare that against Comma's cable, the one that comes with the Comma 4, and you'll see exactly what it doesn't connect. So those data lines, D- and D+, those aren't connected. Now, an interesting thing is it actually shows the CC1, CC2 connections. They're connected, but it shows them very dim. It's not your imagination or my imagination, because when I compare it to the other cable, it's definitely brightly lit there. So it's probably got more resistance going on or something weird. I'm not going to investigate that anytime soon, but it's just worth noting. Let's compare that to the cable that comes with the Comma 3X. So this is the cable that comes with the Comma 3X, as well as the Comma 3. And you can see on one end it has this right angle bend, and then it's got straight. The problem with this one also, if you try to use it and then on the new Comma 4, if you're trying to be creative and go like this, it actually won't slide in all the way. It's just barely not long enough. This metal does kind of touch the connection inside, but it's not fully seating. The other end does work. So this opening is actually bigger than I originally thought. So that's a good thing. I've actually found that every single straight connection that I have for all the cables that I have, they all fit. So that's worth noting. But the only ones that fit with a right angle are the ones that fit like this. Okay, so this is one of the shorter right angled cables that I have. And then one of the longer right angled cables that I have is one that I have pinned in the installation help channel on Discord. And it's actually a little bit deeper than this other one. So you can see that here. I'll show you some measurements, but first let me just show you what this looks like seated. So that's seated all the way. So you can see it sticks out a little further. but we're still only talking about like 1/2 inch at the most sticking out. Of course, when you mount it, it has to slide down. This debug cable, we put the Comma cable, the C3 cable aside. I'll just show you that the debug cable, I believe it has all the connections are connected, all the wires inside. So you can see that. So that's good. But remember, they don't all need to be connected due to the way that the OBDC spec works. Looks like I had another cable hiding in here. This is an extension cable. Let me just show you that this extension cable, I believe it has all the connections, or maybe at most one wire is not connected, but I'll throw this into the mix. So I've got the extension cable plus the debug cable. Make sure that it has a good satisfying connection. Okay, and that's got everything connected. So this extension cable is good. It's another one that I have, I believe, pinned in the installation help channel. And finally, we'll just do a test on the C3X cable because I'm fairly positive it does not have everything connected either, similar to the new cable. So we can check. And you can see what it has missing is just one connection, this CC1. If I were to flip things around, it would actually show up as CC2. Let's just very quickly measure the thickness of these cables. Here's the 4 main ones to note. We can first look at this one here. I'm interested in the thickness of just this thin part here. So you can see 2.73 millimeters. Okay, how about Comma's new cable for the C4? So if I squeeze it, let me just go like that so it's not squeezed too much. 3.87, 3.86. If I squeeze it, can get it down 3.43, but that's with a lot of squeezing. So you can get it down to maybe 3.8 with just a little squeezing. Once again, this was an extra millimeter thinner. Okay, and then we have this extension cable. 4.34, 4.3 or so, depending on how much you squeeze the cable. So that's, you can tell it's pretty thick. And then here is my debug cable. And this is about, with just a little bit of squeezing, about 4.5 millimeters. So super thick, little less thick, thinner, and thinnest. Okay. And also just a real quick comparison between the bend radius of Comma's cable. So these are the two thinnest cables. So if I line them up like that, and you can see this can bend like that. You'll see why this is important later, but so you can see that this one is capable of being bent quicker than the other one. And so that can make a difference if you're trying to get it to go over or under a cover, like the camera cover, go like that or like that. Either one is useful. So you can get it real close to camera cover. Can't get as close with Comma's cable. So it's more like that, or like that, or run it under the camera cover. So that's going to create one of your main limitations when mounting it on the windshield. The other limitation will be coming down to the driver monitoring lens. This camera, whether or not you can see it and it can see you. So I'll talk about that more in the car. The Comma 4 up on the windshield in the position that I had it when I first received the prototype. And the prototype one came with a 3D printed mount, and I basically just slapped it on. And when I did that, my main consideration was the clearance between the camera cover and the top of the C4, as well as the cable. Now this cable is not what came with it. Comma's cable was a straight cable, and as you can see, once I get it all the way inserted, okay, the cable can basically hit the camera cover, and if you're not careful, you'll get yourself into a situation where you can't easily take the C4 on and off. So basically, you have to make some tough choices. Plus, you need to make sure that you're able to see the driver monitoring camera. So the driver monitoring camera, you should be able to see it with both of your eyes comfortably. So my GoPro right now is mounted on basically my forehead area. So this makes it look like I can just see the bottom here, but actually my actual eyes can see the fan area as well. Let's say I'm not happy with the mount that I have there, or I'm trying to remove a Comma 3 mount. Okay, so basically I recommend something that seems scary, but it really isn't. It's just an adjustable wrench here, and you're going to want to adjust it to basically the height. So right there. Yep, and then I'm not going to mess with it this way, although I could, I guess, but I'm going to mess with it sideways. So I decided to escalate this a notch by putting on some gloves and bringing some extra weaponry. So I've got razor here. Ideally, I'd have a handle to hold this razor. I also have, just in case, my knife. And since I'm going to have some alcohol involved in here, I'm going to put a little towel or a cloth under where I expect stuff to be falling. I'm going to put some rubbing alcohol. This is actually 91%. It's a fresh bottle. Get some of this in there. This is going to start eating at the adhesive. I can actually shove it a little bit into the mount so you can already see that it's digging in there. And if you actually do this, sneaking around every side of it, then you can get it off pretty easily. I might have actually gotten enough of the razor in there to really remove the whole mount with the wrench, but now I've pushed quite a bit of the razor in there. And it looks like I've actually just maybe gotten a layer. Like this is a FDM 3D printed mount. So, yeah. So, that's what I'm left with there. I've got like a thin layer of, I guess that's the VHB adhesive still there. So this is a mount that you guys won't have because the production mounts are injection molded. But I'll work on getting the rest of this off. Gonna put some more alcohol on here and then just kind of let it work itself in. Yep, so that's almost entirely off. Okay, so here's that rest of the piece. And now it's just a matter of scraping this adhesive off the windshield. It's kind of sticky, but you just have to be patient and keep going at it. I'm going to put a little more alcohol on this razor. And just kind of wipe it around there. Okay. Okay, so that was pretty good. You can see from the front of the windshield that you would see that I wrote old here, but this is an outline of the old mount. You'll see on this windshield it actually has a center line or a center point marked by this little arrow here. I'll just kind of circle it there. So you've got that point, and then on this car, I know that the LCAS camera is a center point as well, so I'll just kind of make a note here. So what I want to do is I want to draw a line from this to this. I have videos showing this already, but this is important enough that we should really get it taken care of. Now, I would normally do it with string, but in this case, I just have some tape. So I'm going to use some tape to do it straight down the middle with that edge. And I'm just going to draw a line following it down. Just drew a vertical line in the area that I'm interested in putting the new mount. I've put some double-sided tape on the back of this C4, and basically I'm going to use it to do some trial fitments. So and I put this edge of the tape right where I knew the mount could be placed, like at the top of the windshield side of the mount, where then it would be able to start sliding through the rest. So it's got the narrow channel, but then it widens up down here. You can see where the narrow channel is, and then where it widens. Center line is going to go on that center line. And you can see where the old mount was. Let's just try there, just to see. Okay, and you can see it's holding up on its own with that double-sided tape. See if I can see the driver monitoring camera. So the way this GoPro is mounted, it's gonna be hard for you to see, but I can just tell you, basically, I can see, if I'm just sitting normally in my chair, I see about half of the fan shroud area, which means I could actually put this up a little bit higher. Now, before I get carried away with that, let's see if the cable will at least go in. And you can see it can. Fantastic. So I can just go like that, and you can see it will go in. I'm not going to put it all the way in, but you can see that it clears. But it actually just barely clears. Now, if I put it in at an angle, I could sneak it in. But it's very comfortable right now. It just means that this is a very comfortable place. I'll make a note of it here. I'll just say this is comfortable. Okay. I'm going to test the limit though. So just peel it off. So you can see I probably can do that a few more times. And instead of having it at the comfy limit, I'm going to lift it up about 5 millimeters or so. Okay, so you can see I'm very, very close to the camera cover. So I'm exploring the upper bounds of where I could possibly place this. So I'm just make sure it's stuck real good. And let's see if I can get this cable in there. Yeah, I can still get it in there. Amazing. Cool. So that might be a winner, because I feel like any higher I wouldn't be able to get to it. But let me just sit back in my chair. And yeah, this is good because although you might not be able to tell, yeah, I can, so the camera is a little bit higher, but with my own eyes, I can just barely see the fan. So in my opinion, that's probably the best location. You can see where the slot widened. So that, like I said, was the bottom of the tape. So that's right here. And compare that to the mount here. So you can see that is where we want this piece right there. I'm going to take this and line it up like that. And then just put a line where the top of the mount is. And what I've got here is a postcard, which has a nice right angle. You could use anything that has a right angle. And I'm going to use this vertical line that I drew earlier, the center line, and have the postcard lined up with that. So hopefully you can see that. And have the corner on that crosshair. And then basically make a nice straight line. So I'm going to make it straight by going like this. As an extra precaution, I'm going to mark the vertical lines on the mount with this silver marker, just so it's easier to see. So hopefully you can see how I've marked this. Okay, we only get one shot for the most part, so you can do it in a sneaky way where you maybe peel back a little bit more than half of this and then try to angle it in a clever way. And put some extra pressure on it. You can see I have the dots lined up and I have it horizontally lined up, giving it some pressure for a little bit. And I can do it like this. And then put the cable on. And with my car, I need to start it since I didn't connect the Comma power. So now it goes on with the ignition. And I'm pretty happy with that location. So what I'll do is I'll clean up the markings that are all on the outside and let it calibrate by driving over 15 miles per hour, and then I'll be good to go.